Everybody, welcome. This is Donna with PixelPoint, and we're getting ready to start.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. This is Donna Cray. We're getting ready to start session 7 of our version 12 webinar series. And we are recording, and we're ready to go. And Emily already confirmed that you can see my screen. So we'll pick up where we left off. We've gotten through everything that had to do with administrative, table, general setup. I'm going to skip over members for just a minute because there's a lot in there, and there's a lot of new functionality in version 12. So members, if you look at your schedules, is being covered on Thursday. And we're going to jump into, I'm going to go reverse. I'm going to get the easy stuff done first. So let's go to mail. Mail's real simple. All right, so in mail we have two options. You can send mail or view mail responses. So we're going to go into send mail. And here, it's not an email system per se. This is a mail system to broadcast on the register. So when you're doing this, send mail, I can send it to a specific person, and I can take my drop-down box and then select the actual person that I want to send it to. I can do it by job position, so I could send it to everybody who's an owner or a cashier or a wait staff, or I could choose everybody. Now, when you do everybody, again, this only broadcasts on the POS system. So only those that actually have to touch the system will actually see this. So for instance, your kitchen staff, who only time possibly they would touch their system is if they're clocking in and clocking out. But if the restaurant is not using our time and attendance functionality, obviously those staff members do not touch the system and they won't see the message. So that's something to keep in mind when you're doing this. So we can select who we want to send this to, and then we have our choice of type of mail. So a mail message is going to take up the entire POS screen. So as soon as I clock in, and there's a message waiting for me, either again because you've picked me as a singular person that you're sending the message to, or you're sending it to my job position, or to everybody again. It's going to take up the entire screen, and you can put a fairly detailed message in there for them to view. A broadcast message is just going to do a short message. It's like a little banner, if you will, that just pops up. It's good in terms of if you're going to put, hey, reminder everybody, we have a Saturday staff meeting. Be on time at 10 a.m. As opposed to something more detailed. So maybe the mail message is reminding everybody of a new policy that just got put in place. Maybe there's a new dress code that was just put in place. Or there's reminding everybody that you need them to check in with the manager to receive their new uniform shirt or whatnot. A response message is just like a mail message in that it's going to take up the entire screen. But we're going to be responding. There's a yes or no that will pop up, so the employee has to actually touch yes or no once they see the message. So again, if I'm going to say I'm going to do this to everybody, subject is going to be Saturday meeting. Please confirm you will be attending Saturday's meeting. Okay, and then I can go ahead and hit send. All right, mail sent to destination. So destination, again, is the POS system. It's going to pull up on the POS message because I send it to everyone, for everyone who, as soon as they clock in, or if you did this in the middle of the day and they were already clocked into the unit, and maybe I'm in the middle of ringing up an order, being either I'm a bartender or I'm a server, I'm ringing up an order. If I'm in the middle of an action, it's not going to freeze me out at that point. I'm not going to be stopped. I can continue to do what I'm going to do. As soon as I complete the transaction, be it I'm paying the transaction or I'm printing it or I'm sending the order to the kitchen, whatever the case is, once I'm done with being in the center of that particular order, then the message is going to pop up on screen and look for them to give a yes or no answer to it. All right, and close that form. So to review those responses, that's where view response mail comes into play. So once they have gone in and looked at the message, then you're going to see here employees that responded yes or employees that responded no. So I can hit open response file, and if I had a number of messages out there, maybe I have 3 or 4 different ones out there, I pick the one that I want to actually look at. So I'm going to say Saturday's meeting. I'm going to click OK. And then this would show me a list of everybody who has responded yes or everyone who has responded no. Now, notice there isn't anything in here for anybody who has not responded. This is just going to show me people that have viewed the message and clicked either yes or no. If Saturday has come and gone, and say that there were staff members that were on vacation or they're on leave for whatever reason, and they did not work in that time period, now what I might want to do is delete that subject, because if they clock in on that Monday after, it's going to still bring up that message. There was, if you notice, when we built the message, nothing I could put in a time frame. I may have said Saturday, but I can't put in a date range and say only pop up, but from this date to this date, and then automatically, avoid it or delete it after fact. So I may want to, after we've gone past this, because this is date specific, go ahead and delete the message, delete the subject, if you will, so that, again, my staff on Monday morning doesn't get pinged with all these messages that ask them, you're going to be on Saturday's meeting, because now that's just going to cause some confusion, because they may be, hey, we just had a meeting on Saturday. Is there another meeting coming up on this coming Saturday? So that's something you might want to do. And to do that, you just hit delete subject, and it's going to ask you, are you sure you want to delete this, yes or no? And I'm going to say yes. All right. So that's mail message. Very simple. All right. Employee setup. So we have quite a bit to cover here on employee setup. So starting from, I'm going to skip over employee setup specific and get into some of the other settings first, because you kind of need to know them to understand what we did before you actually go in and set up an employee. So department setup. This is something you would do beforehand. This has everything to do with reporting and also for scheduling, if you will. So again, clicking my flashlight, we have a couple of defaults. So if you'll notice your report type, kitchen, and these are hard-coded, kitchen, restaurant, manage, owner, or other. What does this particular department description, and we talk about department descriptions when it comes to a restaurant, you're thinking of labor division. So common ones, which are the defaults that we've set up in here already, are your kitchen staff, your management staff, and your restaurant staff. Now, you may have a restaurant where there's also valet, and maybe you're not contracting valet out. Maybe you actually pay valet through you want to get a little bit more definitive with your reporting. So instead of doing kitchen staff, maybe you break it down by cooks versus bussers, go even so far as breaking it down by prep cook versus line cooks. And maybe, because maybe your job types, you have saute, you've got line cook, those that actually build plates, if you will, versus prep, which is taking care of all the bulk ingredients kind of thing. And again, maybe you do something as simple as, again, you go from, you break down bussers and dishwashers separate from your cooks. So when you're setting that up, this is where you would set up that particular division. And then as a global reporting category, you still want to assign it to one of these 5 global reporting categories. So for instance, I'm going to change this up a little bit, and I'm going to create a new one. And I want to do cooks. Okay, and cooks are part of the kitchen staff. And save. And that's it. And then the only other option through here is it active or is it not active? So again, if you are, the 3 defaults are the kitchen, the management, and the restaurant staff. Once you're setting up a restaurant, if they do want to go a little bit more in detail. So again, with the restaurant staff, maybe that's really, you're going to break it down from wait staff, bartenders, and hosts. So you may want to inactivate the generic restaurant staff because you're going to put in these other 3 levels. Okay? And I'm going to save that and close. The next option in here is employee points performances. So if you remember, back on point of sale and manager screens and within the employee subfolder, there was good and bad. This is where you can set up the breakdown of what you're going to reward the staff for. So again, it has to do with, and let me just refresh your memory on this because it's been a little while since we did this. When I go into POS function setup, managers, and employee functions, whoops, double click, I just went to single click. Oh, come on now. There we go. Good performance and bad performance. So again, we're applying that right away on point of sale when the customer happened to say something to the manager noticed something. So they want to go into that employee's record right then and there. This is when you set up all of those different categories, if you will, or groupings, if you will. So bad work versus good. Notice we've got point index. How many points is each of them worth? And what's the weight? Is it a negative or is it a positive based on their performance level? So again, I can do it either in that grid format or I can go to the actual grids. So bad job, in this case, it's worth a negative 25%. or 25 points, if you will. Broke a glass, that's a -5. Customer complaint, -50. Customer praise, +50. Good work, +25, and late for work, and -50. So again, this is using the functionality on the front side. As you're managing your day, you are recording these choices or adding these choices to the employee's work file as the day goes by. And there's a report that you can generate that's going to give you all that information that you can actually see it. Okay? And again, you can add or add them as you choose. Okay, security levels. That's actually job position. Let's do security levels first. So, security levels. This first main screen, function AR mods for accounts. This is showing me the very first list of a security setting that I can do. So we're going to get into this in a second. Minimum security levels. So the way we do our security levels is we do from number 1 through 99. And they're generic. Now the system will come with some preset groups already. You can modify any way you want to modify them. We've just taken a number and we've assigned it to a job and determined what that job then for it can do. And we've assigned weights to all the different functionalities that they can do. So I'm going to hit my flashlight right now so you can actually see what I'm talking about. This is over 200, I believe it's 200 and some odd, different job functions that you can break down and you can assign a security level to. So for instance, cash out employee. You have to have a job that has a minimum security level of a 50 to be able to do a cash out. So if I'm a server and I want my servers to do their own cash outs, that's telling me that my wait staff or my job called server has to have minimum of 50 or higher. Or maybe the servers can't do their own cash outs. They have to have a manager present when they're doing their cash outs because we're dealing with money, etc. So again, I would want my wait staff to have a job setting that's lower than 50 so that they couldn't do it on their own. The other option, because there is some that are already preset, is you could actually just raise this level or decrease this level. So maybe I don't want to touch the job setting, the level that is set up on the actual individual jobs. I'm going to actually go into the individual function, and I'm going to adjust that setting, which sometimes is an easier thing to do as opposed to having to review everything you're letting a server do versus everything you're letting, say, a manager do versus everything you're letting a busser do, or a bartender do. So this is literally all the different functionalities broken down. So even for, say, for instance, there's our employee performance bad or good right behind it. I have to have a minimum, my job has to have a minimum of a 75 to be able to actually apply that to a server. So keep in mind, this button is within the manager screen. So we're letting you get into the manager screens, but all the buttons that we have on those different function tabs in the manager screen doesn't necessarily mean you can get in and do anything inside of that. So that's where I'm saying instead of locking you completely out of a certain screen of functions, I'm going to let you into that screen, but then I'm going to lock down the individual functions and what you can or cannot do. This is another one of those things where you want to go on the portal, pull down the documentation to get some more details on what all of these different functionalities do, and just go through this line by line, familiarize yourself with all of the different settings that are in the system, all the different security settings we have. Like here's, for instance, manual credit card entry. I set it as a 25. Manual price limit set as a 75. A lot of these I think you'll be able to read through the description and understand what it is that they do. But you definitely want to go through the documentation and actually play with these to determine what you want them to do or what they don't want, what the restaurant may or may not want their specific people to do. And that's also going to determine if maybe you need to add another job function. And we'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to pick this one here, no sale transaction closing. So I wanted to show you something on this. So this is a no sale. So the way we typically do no sales in our system is you basically open up a fake check, and then you hit cash or whatnot, just to pop the cash drawer open. I will need to pop up that drawer, and it's a no-sale transaction. But now I may want some security on that. So in this case, we've got security set at 25. So again, you need to look at your jobs to determine who you want to be able to do this. One of the things we also have in this area is for every one of these reasons, we have this thing where you can ask for a reason. Every one of these security levels can be prompted to ask for a reason. Why are you about to do what you're going to do? So if I pull down my drop-down box, if I have any reasons in here, I'm going to see these. So first of all, these are more security settings first. Do not ask. So anytime I do a no sale, it's never asking me why I'm doing it. Always ask. Every time somebody wants to do in this particular security setting of no sale, you have to ask me why you're doing it, or ask and override. So that also gives them, even though, say, this needs, I'm set as a 25, and maybe I want another function of it's going to need a 50, but this says, you know, as long as you give me a reason, I'm going to let, that's going to act also as an override. So I'm going to say always ask. So now I'm going to have an option to put some reasons in here. And I don't have any reasons set up just yet. So if I want to add a reason, I'm going to just click Add. And if I had any reasons set up, I would see here in my list all the reasons that are already built into my system. And the one thing you need to understand is that this list is going to be it's throughout this entire area. This is not just going to show me the reasons that are specific just to what I set up right now for no sale. If I set up any reasons for refunds, it's going to show those reasons as well. Basically, it creates a library of all the different reasons, and then you choose which ones you want to apply to this particular security function. So I'm going to hit Add because I don't have any reasons at all, and I'm going to say Change. So I'm basically saying that a reason that they may want to open the cash drawer is because the customer needed a change. And let's say I'm going to add another reason. I'm going to put in here that we need we're starting the shift. One of the things that probably some of you do know already is that when you do start the shift and you assign the cash drawer, the drawer doesn't pop on its own. So even though you've assigned someone to the drawer and you've set them up so they can actually open the drawer, and when you put your float in, you know, at that point in time, it doesn't auto-pop the drawer, so you're going to need to do a no-sale just to pop the cash drawer open so you can actually get your system, you can actually get the system set up. Okay, so I'm going to click Apply. So you can see, and not only did I add the reason to my list, but now I'm applying this to this particular security function. Okay, and if I wanted to change anything about it, I just highlight the one I want to change and click Change. I can also edit, so maybe I want to change the description on it. So maybe instead of saying change, I want to say make change. Okay, and apply that. Okay, maybe I've decided I don't want that option in here, so I'm going to remove it. Remove this reason, which will set it to inactive. I'm going to say yes. Now, but notice, if I go to Add, that is still in my list. All right, so if I go to another job function that maybe I might use that for, that will also populate in that situation as well. New to us also is that we've added reports now. These reasons will populate on various reports so that you actually, not only do you see anytime that function has been used and who used it, or if it had needed an override, who overrode it, you'll also see the actual reason that populate on the report. Okay. Over through here, minimum job requirements. So this is telling me, based on the hierarchy, you can already see my hierarchy, these are the jobs that I've set up in the system, and they are organized by highest level of security. Well, actually, I have to check that. They should be organized by highest levels of security to the lowest level of security. So 25 is the wait staff normal. Now notice where it shows the asterisk, no access with current setting. So basically, this level up, everybody has the ability to perform this particular function without a security override. The job code clock in and clock only does not have the requirements to do this. So if they were to try to do an open sale for whatever reason, they would need a manager to override that so they could actually get in there and do it. Let me pick one that has a little higher security. So PixelPoint credit check. Can I get into Authman to make changes? So you'll notice here, manager is the lowest, and system admin and owner, again, have the ability to get into there without any kind of security override necessary, but all the jobs below them with the asterisk by them, they need an override. They do not have the minimum level of security required. Okay. Log security activity. If I click on this, this adds this particular function to the log settings that we have. So when you go into the back office and you can actually go in and look at the logs, this will add to that list of logs that we're going to generate. So it's in general setup here. and I want to look at system logs. So now that would be another option in here that I could actually check. So see where it says no sale right there? I am now able to collect logs for that particular security function. You want to be a little cautious because I said this is turned on based on the actual security level. So again, like I said, there's over 200 of them in here. If you were to go in and turn all of them on for logging, you can imagine how taxing that might end up being for the system. So you definitely want to caution on, turning on specific ones that they might want to track. Like no sales is something that sometimes they like to log and they like to track that. But just be kind of cautious on how many of these you're actually turning on for logging, because again, the files get big and it's just more data that's being collected inside the system. Okay, so that is security levels. So these numbers again, so how does that correlate? So that then comes into play when we talk about job positions. Now, in a lot of POS systems, your positions, you think of them in terms of payroll. What function, what does this person do for a job and how much do I pay them? We actually link not only payroll, but also security is one. You don't have two separate areas for it. So you'll see here, the first one I have on my list is cashier. And again, using my little searchlight, I can see these are all of the job positions I have created in the system so far. So we were calling it a cashier. Department description, you remember back in our other screen, this is again where I said you can go basic restaurant management or kitchen, or if you wanted to break it down by cooks, blessers, dishwasher, hostess, wait staff, you can do that as well. It all depends on how the in-depth level of reporting that you want to look at. Security level. So this is where we tie the security level into it. Based on the security levels that we've set up in the previous screen, all those different functions, what do we want to allow cashiers to do? And that's when we kind of do it. And this is a part of the startup database. You'll see that we've already assigned different levels to all those different security setup functions as already predefined based on some basic jobs. So in general, cashiers are allowed to do X, Y, Z. Wait staff is allowed to do this. Management, typically functions are, these particular security settings are manager functions only. But again, you can change it up and redefine them basically is what you're doing any way you would like to go. But this is kind of a starting point. So as a starting point, and I'll just give us the grid view here, cashiers are set as a 30. Clock in and clock out only as a job position. All they do is clock in and clock out. So it's a 1. They don't have any abilities within those security settings with the exception of clocking in and clocking out. Okay. Management staff. As a general, we have set that as 75. Owners are set. Typically, I don't personally recommend you set the owners the same as the system administrator. That's a personal preference on my side. I think the system administrator, our support desks, they should have the highest level. They should always be higher than anyone else at the store. So that's something you might want to consider, unless, of course, it's a freestanding system. They don't want support. They need to manage their own system. In that case, yeah, then you're going to want to give them the highest level because they are responsible for everything they have in their system. One of the things you might want to look into, though, just to see if you maybe want to set it up as a little bit of a lower entity. And I'm going to show you another reason why you might want to do that when we get into employee setup. Our wait staff management is set as a 50, and the wait staff normal is set as a 25. Again, those are all just random numbers that correlate within the security settings, the random numbers that we set up in there. Okay, so let's go back to cashiers. So again, not only is this set up for payroll, but it's also set up for security levels. We use the one code for it. Also, with regards to this particular job function, enforce declared cash tips. So in your restaurants that are sit-down restaurants where they actually do get tips, or it could even be in, say, buffet restaurants where they get tips even though the servers don't ring up any sales. The cashiers ring up the sale, but necessarily do cashiers get tipped? No. In a buffet market, wait staff would get the tips, but the wait staff doesn't ring up any of their own tickets. So keep that in mind. So declared cash tips. We have a choice of enforcing this. A, do not enforce it. Or I can enforce it when they go to do their cash out, or I can enforce it when they do the clock out. So when they go to hit either one of those buttons, it's going to ask you then to enter declared cash tips. So again, in the situation like I was saying with the buffet environment, yes, the cashier would do a cash out, but again, generally the cashiers, when the customers come into the buffet market, they pay up front. They don't tip the cashiers. They tip the wait staff. The wait staff doesn't do a cash out, but the wait staff would do a clock out. So when they go to clock out, it will then prompt them for entering in their cash tickets. Okay? Do not send POS announcements. So this goes back to mail, which is why I want to do mail first. So is this a job position that I don't want to send those announcements to? In this market, cashier, no, I would want them, like I said, for the Saturday meeting. Anytime I would put any kind of an email message out there, or a system message, if you will, out there, I probably want them to have it. But let's say maybe I put my cleaners through the system. So I actually have a job for cleaners, and they clock in and clock out, and I want them to be separate, but they don't come to those kind of staff meetings. So maybe that's a job position that I would not want to send those announcements out to. Or maybe my landscapers or my window washers, anybody that does maintenance on my system. Maybe I have a POS system, like, you know, for whoever's going to maintain my system for me, my admin person, maybe your support person or your installer. When you go out there to do some kind of check on the system, or you're going to do training on the system, and you're going to log in, you don't want that job position to pop up those messages. Okay. Advanced. So initial float. So this is when you're assigning someone to the cash drawer. The float is the amount of money that you're opening the cash drawer with. Do you want the system to be prompting so that they tell the system how much they have, yes or no? If you don't want that, that's what triggers that. And again, it's based on job positions. So any job position is going to own a cash drawer. So the basics are going to be your cashiers and your bartenders. They own the cash drawer. So do I want that to prompt, yes or no? Do I want it to prompt? And if it prompts, then it's going to come up. Now again, going back to, if you remember when we did payment setup, when we did cash, I can either have it set up so that it just prompts me with just a flat dollar. So basically you just have an open keypad and you type in, it's going to be $200. Or I can have it pop up and ask me for any denominations. So, you know, 10s, 50s, 100s, singles, coin, pennies, nickels, dimes, whatever it is you want it to be. So this just is going to say, yes, prompt, but how you set it up in your payment styles, if you do denominations, that's going to determine what the window looks like. That does pop up. Start with, we can have a default. So maybe every cash store in my system always has a $200 float, always. So first of all, they won't get prompted then for denominations, but they will get a little message that pops up and says, is your opening drawer $200, yes or no? So there is a possibility to override for whatever reason. If the drawer happened to be 210 for some strange reason, they could adjust it and say it's 210. But this starts them off with a default. Okay, coming over through here, biometrics authentication required. So we do sell biometrics hardware, which is basically fingerprint reading, and the system interfaces with that. This would say, do they always have to use it, yes or no, and based on job position again. So once you turn on biometrics authentication, your choice is never. So that means they have a choice. They could go in with their biometric fingerprint. They could go in with a code. And they also could go in with a swipe card if you've also set them up with a swipe card. So it really gives them 3 ways excuse me, of logging into the system. If you check mark authentication required, so say for instance for clock in and clock out, maybe it doesn't matter if they have a code and they have a card. When they're clocking in and clocking out, they always have to use biometrics. The system will not recognize any other form of logon except for biometrics. And then you can also do that not just for clock in and clock out. The other option is clock in and clock out and breaks. So basically, this is enabling the stores to really crack down on time and attendance. So no one can log in their buddies early. I call in, I'm running 10 minutes late. Hey, can you clock me in? Here's my code. Maybe you can use that code when you're ringing up tables, but when it comes to payroll, you always have to have your finger present in order to get into the unit. Okay? Employee cash out report. So we talked about back in general setup what the employee cash out report was, and that's where you set it up in general. So let me just again refresh our memory. Save changes, no. So back here in admin and system setup, and then POS reports, This is the default, if you will, employee cash out report. And again, if you don't want the default, you have the choice of going in here and selecting a different one. And again, remember, all the reports that are at POS, that are literally 40-column reports, all begin with POS. So that's how you can see what are your choices. And if you kind of scroll through here, you're going to see there are a couple of different variations for cash outs. Cash out summary, cash out who by starts. Where's some other one? I know there's a few more in here. There's at least 2 or 3 more in here that I know that are in here. Cash out summary, cash out who starts. So there's a couple of other options. Now this is a default for everybody. But if for some reason you have a situation where you want by a specific job type, they have a unique cash out report. They're going to do something that's different. Then this is where you would go in and again pull down your drop down, go into Pixel Reports, and select. And here this one is sorting the way it's supposed to. It's supposed to only show me the ones that are POS available reports, only 40 column. So I could go in here and I could choose for this particular job type which one they're actually going to utilize, which report for that group they would actually look at. Okay, so that again, only if by job type you want custom cash out reports. That's how you would set that up. Percentage of tip out received. So this is for a pooling restaurant. And again, that buffet style restaurant that I was talking about might qualify, where you share the tips. Everybody gets a tip. And this is where you base the percentage that each person gets based on, again, their job type. So say servers maybe pull in, 50% of the tips. All the tips that are collected, they get 50% of the tips. And then the remaining amount is divided out amongst the job types. So maybe cashiers get 10%. Maybe your hostesses get 10%. Your bus staff, gets 20%, and your kitchen staff gets 10%. So by each job type, you would identify what is the percentage of tip that particular job type gets. All right. Minimum and maximum pay rates. This is where you can set up what the default pay structure is in your particular restaurant for job type. So for my cashiers, perhaps they get paid starting at $7 an hour upwards to the maximum value of $12 an hour. So this is where you would set this up. So what happens then in the system is when I go to add a new employee and I select their job type as cashier and I go to add in whatever their pay rate is, because the pay rates are set up by employee specific. They're not job specific, they're employee specific. As long as I put in whatever pay rate was promised to that particular employee, I put it in between the range that I have set up here, it's all good. If I go outside of the range, I will get a message that tells me that I'm outside of the range. I'm either too high or too low. So I need to readjust what I'm going to type into the system. Part of it's to catch in case there's data entry errors by the management when they're adding new employees. Also, though, it's a great way amongst the management staff to understand what is the pay rates, what is the range that I'm allowed to pay. So if I'm interviewing for new cashiers and I have somebody who's awesome, and I want to start them out at the top of the scale because I don't think they're going to be a cashier very long, I'm already thinking I'm going to groom them to be a floor manager. And I don't know. Maybe I don't know what the owner has set up as the ranges. Nobody's communicated that information to me. I can then go into the back office, into the job position itself, and I can see what are the ranges, what are the acceptable ranges that that the house has decided on, that particular restaurant has decided on. Okay, shift rules. So we've talked about shift rules. This has to do with time and attendance and the various labor laws that are in all of the different areas. So this is where, as opposed to a general shift rule for everybody, this is where you can set up specific shift rules that apply to job specific. So maybe you have in your area, there's a very specific job rule for kitchen staff. It's different than floor staff. This is where you can actually apply that rule, again, based on that job position. So right now, there's 2 different ways that you know of that you can apply a shift rule. There's generic that applies to everybody. There's job specific, and there's one more possibility coming up. All right, and that's it for jobs. All right, so again, if you're going to add a new job, it's just add. type in what you want the name of the job to be. So let's say I decide that I'm going to do cooks. Let's just say cook. And the department, so I'm going to say it belongs to my cook department. Again, if I don't want that detail, I could say it just belongs to my kitchen staff. What is their security level? Well, cooks, they don't touch the system typically, right? All they do basically is clock in and clock out. So I already know that my clock in and clock out lowest level is a 1, so I'm going to say it's a 1. I'm matching it up based on the functionality that I know is set up in the system. Enforce declared tips. I'm going to say, nope, I'm not going to force it, because in my restaurant, the kitchen staff does not get tips, and nobody knows that they get tips. If they do, if a wait staff is being generous and decides they want to tip a cook because they really helped out on a big party and they made them glow and they got a huge tip off of it, I may want to, slip some money over to my cook, but I'm not going to require my cooks to record that, because in my business, I'm not required by law maybe to put that out there. Okay? My advanced tab, I don't need to prompt for a float because they don't touch the cash drawer. I don't have biometrics in my store, so I'm not going to use it. If I did have biometrics in my store, then I might want to click one of the other 2 options. Okay? And I don't have to worry about any of these other settings because cooks don't do a cash out. They don't, again, we're not tip pooling, so I'm not going to put a percentage in there because I don't choose to use that. And maybe I'm not going to use rules. Maybe I don't need a custom rule for cooks. They're going to follow the general shift rule that's already in my system for everybody. Now, I might want to put minimum maximum pay in here, though, so my kitchen, again, my management staff knows what I, as an owner, have set up as my parameters. So maybe my minimum is 9 and my maximum is 15. Okay, and now we have our rule set up. And close. Okay, so that is job position. So now that we've gone through some of that, now this will make more sense. Employee setup. All right, so employee setup, again, it's always going to sort to the first item on the list. We're sorting alphanumeric, so my lowest level. And the reason that this is coming up, we sort by last name. So if you put any blanks in your last name field, that's why it's going to come up first. So let me go to somebody that actually has a proper setup. Fields, employee name, last name, pretty self-explanatory. This is the information that will show up on the reports. POS name, this is what shows up on POS. So if I'm a manager on POS and I want to assign, say, a good glowing, good performance reports points to an employee, the name that I have here is what is going to show up on POS. So maybe Abby's real name is Abigail. So on my regular reports, I want this to show up as Abigail. But her nickname, or the name that she commonly goes by, is Abby. And you'll see that with a lot of people. They have, their full name. So my full name might be William, but I go by Bill. So my POS name is Bill. Or maybe I go by Shorty, or whatever. Some people just have DJ. Maybe they go by DJ. So you can put whatever they commonly go by in their POS name. But again, that is what shows up out on the front end. It shows up on POS. So this also is what shows up on all paperwork on the front end. So cash outs, checks, specifically checks. So you never want to, for the POS name, put the first name, their full name, first and last name, as their POS name, because that, again, is a piece of paper that's given to the customers. And it's not something that I think customers should ever have. They should not have people's full names. The most I ever do is I always do last initial. I always do first name, last initial. Because, again, I'm on point of sale, right? I could have 5 Abbies working for me. I need some way of knowing who is the proper Abby, which Abby am I actually working on. Okay? POS functions. This is to do with scheduling. Are these people going to be visible on my schedule, yes or no? So visible is yes, they're going to be on my schedule. Invisible to POS functions. So yes, they're not on my schedule, they're invisible on my schedule, but they can still access the system. So these might be system administrators, owners. You typically don't schedule your owner to work on the floor. So if I need to log onto the system for some reason as an owner, I don't want it to come up and tell me I'm not on the schedule. Managers. Again, if it's a salaried manager, you may not put them on the schedule because again, I may not want to track the hours. I may or may not. So that's another functionality we can talk about. But you want them to be able to get into the system whenever they need to get to the front side of the system. invisible but cannot log in. So again, they're not on the schedule, they're invisible, and they can't log into the front of the house. They can get into the back of the house by going through, and let me just close up out of here for a second, save changes, no. They can get into this back end based off of the desktop with an icon or off of the start bar. But they could not get into POS and go through Manager to get into the back end. So you're limiting who can get into your system and how they can get into your system. You know, owners some owners are very hands-off. Some owners, they don't know anything about the front of the house. They have no idea how to work the front of the house. They only focus on the back of the house. They're interested in reports. They're interested in payroll, that type of stuff. So maybe you do minimize their abilities on front of the house because they haven't been trained and they don't know what they're doing, but you do give them the option to get into the back of the house. Okay, so that is what POS functions is all about. Okay, address, self-explanatory, address, city, province, or state, postal code or zip code, depending on what it is called in your area. SIN number stands for a social insurance number. In the States, we use that for the Social Security number. It'll take all the digits necessary, so that's something that you might want to fill in. Now, none of these fields are required. The only fields that are required are the first three: employee name, last name, and POS name. Okay? The rest of these are nice to have. It produces on the employee list a nice phone list for you. Obviously, it's in the system, so it's a nice, easy way of pulling up a staff member's information. So it's something I do recommend that at some point they go in and they do. But again, it's not necessary in order for the system, for them to actually get onto the system. Home number, business number, cell number, again, and email number. Now, email and cell, remember with the Alert Manager, if we want to send them alerts and we want to use the either email or text message, we need something in those fields. And if you recall, when we did a search, we could either type in manually what the email address is, or we could type in manually what the phone number was, or we could search for it, and that was populated by information in these two fields. Again, if you don't have a cell phone number in there, you can't look up their cell number. If you don't have an email address in them for them, you can't look up their email address. So again, this is something that actually behooves you to put into the system. Okay, birth date. So again, you can put in the birth date. Now, once you put in the birth date, it's going to calculate the age. This is a nice to have, again, if you're using time and attendance and you're monitoring your labor laws in your area and your minor labor laws, if you have minor labor laws where you live. We do not enforce anything with this. All I'm doing is giving you a visual field so that you can look in her record and you could see how old Abby is. So for instance, let's say that I say that Abby was born, oops, let me fix my, there we go, say 89. So I know Abby is 24 years old. So I don't have an age issue with Abby. Okay, but let's just say that maybe Abby was born in 99. So maybe Abby's only 14. So again, I can see this, and then I can go, oh, I have minor labor laws that I have a challenge with. And actually, where I live, that's not even legal. You can't hire anybody under 16 in my world. So that might be something that, whoops, I went the wrong direction. Well, that didn't work. So just, again, informational for you. There's no restrictions. We can't lock anything down. The POS system is not going to be held accountable to make sure and to enforce those types of laws that are in your area. Okay? Training mode. People always ask us, do we have a training system or training department? We don't have a training department. You can take any employee and put them into training mode. Now, the challenge with this is you've got to remember to take them out of training mode when they are actually production, if you will, on the floor. That is one of the big caveats with this. So what that's going to do for us is it's going to allow them to order. It's going to bring up the regular table screen. It's going to bring up any of the regular tables. And they can go in and they can go to the order screen. They can ring stuff up. All of the forced questions will pop up, and then have all the normal functionality that you needed to have for them to practice on the system, how to void, how to apply a coupon, all that good stuff. it's going to allow them to print a check, and it's going to say training all over the check. Okay? It's going to allow them to close the check only to cash. Our credit card interface system does not have an interface, if you will, with training mode. It doesn't recognize training mode. So you definitely do not want them to practice with a credit card. You do not want them to try to actually authorize a real credit card if their employee file is in training mode. Because again, the system is probably up and running. You've got real business going on, so there are real credit cards being processed. This is just taking Abby and putting her into a training situation, but our authorization manager is on for real. There's no secondary setup in our authorization manager that I can put that in training mode and have that link, if you will. So that's definitely one of those gray areas and big flags that you talk to them when you installers and support people are working with the customers. Make sure they understand. Absolutely do not try processing a credit card if my card is in training mode. Okay. So they can open everything up. Now the other thing about it is sales are not affected. So again, I'm in real business. I have real staff on taking care of real customers. The sales that are rung up on a card that is in an employee that's in training mode, they do not affect the real tracking numbers. They do not whatsoever go into any of those reports. But as an FYI, there is a table, it's called training totals, that it does track all of that information. So if you have some type of a self-training module set up at the store where the servers are required to take, it's a self-motivated training class that they have to do. So the manager says, here's a register. This register doesn't get used a whole lot. I want you to work on this station, and you need to ring up the following. Maybe they give them an exercise, and they have to go through and they ring up the following. So they can actually, there's a table that will show everything they rung up to validate, in fact, that the staff member actually did ring everything up. They didn't just kind of hang out there and not really do anything. Okay, so we're going to take off training mode. All right, advanced. Let's go to advanced. So system interface, this is the same functionality that you saw when we went into your settings on POS. These are the various interfaces in the system that talk about functionality that we went through. So restaurant seating, your dining room situation where you have your tables on the screen, if you will. Quick order. So bar situation where I don't have tables, but I have my table list. I have a checklist. So functionality-wise, quick order, automatically like a quick order kind of situation. Host and hostess, that's going to, when I put my code in, that's going to bring up the reservations window. So I'm seeing all the reservations information. I don't have to go through the table layout and go to manager to get to the reservation screen. It's already there for me. Driver, the interface screen that the driver should be going to. So again, they have their special screen where their unique functionality is listed on. And delivery mode, the same thing. You have that delivery screen that has all the unique functionality that goes with just delivery. Another one that we do have is clock in and clock out only. So for those people that are set up, and again, our security code is 1. We have a job code that we called clock in and clock only. And again, that could have been called anything we wanted to call it. To make it simple, we just happen to call it clock in and clock out only. What happens with that is that if I'm a kitchen staff, I go to hit log in or I swipe my card. All it does is clock me in. It doesn't bring me to another screen. It just clocks me in. And when I'm ready to clock out, it automatically takes me to that Your Settings screen where we have the clock. At that point, I'll have the clock out button set up for them there. So they never can manipulate and get anywhere else into the system other than the Your Settings screen. Okay? Web authorization. This was set up to allow people to remotely connect to the back office system, to get into the system. So you can set up, so once you click web access, this has nothing to do, by the way, with all of the web programs and the servers, the mail stuff that we set up in setup. This is strictly allowing another method for people to get connected to the system remotely. So I set up web access and I set password. So this is where I can set up my unique password to get into the unit. Now, this was designed, and I don't know how often this is still being utilized, but I know the main reason it was designed was for payroll, so that people could log in, and there was a functionality called staff time. So I, as a server, could log in, and I could go in and I could go look at my schedule. And again, it was through an interface called staff time, so they could check their schedules that way. Just outside the box, just to let you all know, with an account that I work on closely is the Baskin-Robbins account. They have their own VPN, they have their own virtual private network that all of the store owners can log into, and we are allowing them to connect into their back office systems using this functionality. They are given a specific web address, and what we do is we set them up that their username, they reference the email field, that is their username, and then we set up the password here, and that's how, and all they can do is get into back office. They can't get to the point of sale, they can't get to the front of the house at all. They can just get into back office from any computer anywhere on the web. So again, as a single owner or multiple store owner, I want to go in and check, maybe I have to do payroll, I want to print payroll, whatever the case is. This allows me to do this from the comfort of my home because, again, my restaurant, I only have one register. They're busy using the register for other things. But that's another way that we actually set it up to utilize this functionality. Reference number is an open general field that just allows you to go in and put in a reference number. So maybe you're linking it to a payroll number. Maybe most often than that, it's linking to a payroll number to match up to another payroll system. Okay, here is your third way of applying a shift rule. Now this would be person specific. So let's say Abby was a minor, and let's say I had created a minor shift rule. In my state, minors are only allowed to work until 9 o'clock at night. They can't go any later than 9 o'clock at night. They also, during the course of the week, cannot work a shift longer than 4 hours, Monday through Friday. So I might create, and they can only work up to 24 hours in a week. So I could create a shift rule that covers some of those parameters, and then I could apply that specifically to Abby. I'm not going to apply it to all of my cashiers or my wait staff, but I want to apply that specifically to a certain employee. Okay? All right, some of our tick boxes down here. Disregard employee shift hours. So this would be for a manager, let's say. I'm going to look at my labor percentages, and my salary managers, I don't want them incorporated into my labor costs. You know, a lot of restaurants won't do that. They only want to look, when they look at their labor percentages, they only want to look at labor percentages for hourly and paid employees, because that they can manipulate. I probably can't do without my salaried employee because they're a management of some style. So you can say disregard their shift hours. So maybe, okay, again, let's take it back over here. Maybe I am going to have them visible, and I am going to schedule my manager, even though he's a salaried position or he or she's a salaried position, because I want that information. I want to show that floor coverage when I'm looking at my schedule. But again, when I actually look at my labor percentages, I don't want to calculate those hours. So I'm having them clock in and out of the system because I just want to see how many hours on average they're working. But I'm not going to use that information in order to work out my labor costs, my labor percentages. Manager on duty. Again, if you remember an alert manager, we have the option to broadcast to manager on duty. So for any of my managers, do I want to treat them as the manager on duty? And again, this is something you could either always set up, or maybe you might be something you go in on a daily basis because you have 4 managers working, but there's one that's the specific or responsible manager on duty. But this will affect on the alert manager, if you choose the option to broadcast to manager on duty, if that person gets it, yes or no. They're considered in that grouping. Till employee card. So this is for what we call generic employees. So generic employee, a lot of restaurants, they don't track sales, and especially in a lot of like walk up to the counter type restaurants, they don't track sales by employees. They have one register with one cash drawer. They could have 5 people working, and I don't want them, for speed of service or whatever their reasoning is, each individual server logging in, logging out, logging in, logging out with their own unique identifiers. I just want a generic employee that's going to run that drawer, and everybody uses the same card or everybody uses the same code. So we can tell the system that that is what that is. That even though, yes, we're setting up an employee, we're setting up a generic employee. So for instance, we have, do I have it as a bartender? Cashier. Oh, I know I have a generic employee in here. I have a generic employee in here. I apologize. I thought I had a generic employee. Oh, here we go, right in front. Bar PM Till. PM Bar Till. So this is the generic card that I'm applying to my bar till. So everybody rings under that code. Okay, that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is if you're going to use our till management. So till management is, again, I have one drawer, but I have multiple hands that need to get in the drawer. So basically, I'm going to make it so that you can get a consolidated cash out, so that I can have multiple people ringing, multiple people putting money in the drawer. So I can track who sold what, who we did voids for, coupons, discounts, upselling, all of that. The one thing I can't track those overs and shorts because, again, I'm sharing one cash drawer with multiple hands going into the cash drawer. So when you assign the drawer, when you open the drawer up, you basically assign the generic card to the drawer. Because I'm telling the system that this generic card, PM bar till, that is who all the monies are going to get calculated for, but Betty and Sue and Donna and Chuck and whoever else are going to ring. So on the cash out, it's going to give a breakdown by all the people that rang under that basic shift and how much they contributed sales-wise to the overall number that's in the cash drawer. So again, you can get the detail that a lot of restaurants like they like, again, chefs is selling, who's selling, voids, etc. All that detailed information you can't get if you go with a generic code or a generic card for everybody to use. Okay, one of the new features that we just added, and I believe just came around in version 12, if I'm not mistaken, or it was a really late version of version 11, lock till card to station. So that particular card, I can tell the system that this particular generic employee or till employee can only be used on a specific station. So a good point in hand on that would be kiosk. So the kiosk employee, and we'll get into how you set up a kiosk, but you have to set up basically a generic kiosk employee. I don't want anyone else using this employee, kiosk employee, on any other register other than the one that is identified as my kiosk machine. So maybe my kiosk station is number 4. That is the only system that this could be used against. So if they got the code, it would not be usable on stations 1, 2, or 3. The only time that employee could be used is over on station 4. Okay? So that is that piece. And I apologize, I was jumping here a little bit, so I missed this whole other half of the screen. So let's go through this. Training mode. So I forgot to come over here to the left, or to the right, excuse me. So start date, end date. Pretty self-explanatory. When did they start? And again, if you're going to use the system to maintain files, when did they end? So I would definitely maintain this, put in what their end date is, and after I was finished cycling out payroll, then I would also go in and is active, uncheck mark that, so that they're still in my system. I can always go back and historically look at them and look at their stuff and see about them, but I don't want them on my main screen as an active employee. Default revenue center. So again, in my scenario with the hotel, maybe I have specific employees, wait staff or kitchen staff, that yes, they float everywhere, but I have certain staff members that only work certain areas. So if I have that gift shop, you know, I might have a select group of staff that only works the gift shop. Or room service. I may have a select group of staff that only works room service. So then you can minimize who shows up where and where they have access to. Okay? Swipe number. How do they get into the system? So even though it looks like we can type here, we really can't. All right? So to assign an access, to assign a swipe number, and even though this says swipe number, notice when I click assign card, it gives me the option for manual enter. If I'm going to assign a card and I'm doing this on a system that has a mag reader on it, I can just take whatever the employee card, unused employee card, mind you, cannot be assigned to anyone else, and swipe it, and the system will read that code. Okay? If I'm going to give them codes, if they don't want to use cards, they just want to use codes, then I'm going to click manual enter, and I'm going to type in what I want that code to be. And then I'm going to click OK. All right. Now notice how it's masking the codes here. There is, and this is by default. Codes are now, since sometime in version 11, it could have been the very first version 11. We mask the codes now. So no matter if you're a manager, I'm right now in the system as a system administrator. I can't see that code. But there is a policy in policy setup that you can go into, and you can unmask employee codes if you so chose. So that's another option for you out there. So again, as a default, we are masking all codes. But you can go change the policy so that you could actually see the codes on screen. All right, reference number, again, generic reference field. So for this particular employee, and let me actually do a real employee so that makes more sense. This particular employee, if we're tying this into a payroll system or I just want a reference of some kind, this is where you would put in that code. Right? Job position. So we talked about the security settings and what that security code or that number stands for, and we talked about actually creating the jobs. This is where now you actually assign those jobs to the specific employee. All right? They can have multiple jobs. So Hannah is already set up as a wait staff normal, but maybe Hannah also sometimes works as a management staff for me. So they can have multiple jobs and unique pay rates. So what is the pay rate that I give Hannah when she's a manager? So maybe she gets $6 an hour when she's working as a wait staff. As a manager. So you'll notice that now we've done that. We do require primary. So basically the primary job, you're identifying what they do more often than not. And also that job then is always the first one on the list. And if you know anything with our list on POS, that first job is already auto-highlighted. So all they have to do is hit OK. So that's one of the reasons why you would like to do the primary jobs. All right? Again, you have different pay rates. And again, because we assign the security settings to the job, the functionality is restricted. So on the days that Hannah clocks in as a wait staff normal, she can only do what a normal wait staff can do. She can't do any management. On the days that she clocks in as a manager is how then she will have access to those manager functions. So what's nice about this is that we're locking her into, based on what she clocks in as, her pay rate. So she can't clock in as a wait staff manager or as a wait staff and A, get paid $6 as opposed to $5, and B, she can't override management. And in conjunction with this, with scheduling, if you do scheduling, if Hannah is scheduled as wait staff normal and she tries to clock in as wait staff manager, it's going to require an override. So again, she can't trick the system or trick management into paying her more on the days that she's not scheduled to actually be a floor manager as opposed to just your average, your wait staff person. Okay? And again, this is for normal pay rate hourly. Salaried is now, if you're going to do salaried, you would put in their yearly salary, and the system will break it down based on your payroll cycle. And we'll talk about how you set up payroll cycles in a little bit. Okay? So this is where if they're an hourly employee, you put in what their hourly wage is. If they're a salaried employee, you're going to put in here what their yearly salary is. Okay? Picture. You can assign a picture. You can upload their picture into the system for reference if you have it. The nice thing about it, I suppose, is if you do it is that if you are printing out the employee cards and you have what you need set up, again, you'd have to have a regular 80-column printer hooked up to the back office. Then you can actually print out like a little employee card that actually has their pictures on it. Okay? All right. So sorry I skipped all this. Schedule. This is where you can put in not their weekly schedule, but this is their scheduling request. What is their normal availability? So let's say that Hannah has school on Tuesdays. So Hannah is not available at all on Tuesdays. Okay? And she'd really rather not work Sundays. So you can highlight, and all I'm doing is holding down my left mouse button and clicking not wanted. Now this doesn't lock it down. It's just when you get into employee scheduling, it's going to pop up and you're going to see that would rather, basically it should be would rather not work, but you can override it and actually schedule her. Okay? Hours preferred. What is the number of hours that she prefers? So maybe Hannah, like I said, she's going to school, so she only wants 30 hours a week. Okay? And then again, that's going to show when we get into scheduling. Skill level. When you're building your schedule, whether you're doing it in a system or you're doing it on paper, you want to balance out your skill on the floor. So this is where you can go in and you can assign a level of skill to each of your employees so that you can kind of balance out to make sure you have a good, proper amount of coverage on your floor. So if Hannah's brand spanking new and you've never worked with her before and you have absolutely no idea what she's capable of, you may start her off as, say, a 3, maybe, until you get her out of training. And then after, 30 days or whatnot, you reevaluate how she is and how well she's doing, and then you can come back in here and say maybe she's a 7 or maybe she's a 5. Or maybe you put everybody in as 5 because that's kind of middle of the road, hoping that they all end up being middle of the road when you did the hiring. And then you adjust it accordingly, pros and cons. Okay? But this, again, is just availability and preferred scheduling. This is not locking anything down. Okay? So, again, sorry for skipping over this. I went out of order on you guys. We did advanced. Well, employee HR. So employee HR is just, again, if you're going to use the system to basically maintain employee files. So some of the stuff that you might put inside of a paper file, you can put into the system, and therefore you can always have it accessible. So gender, I'll only give you 2 choices, male or female. Marital status, Now again, our box is over through here. You can add, so maybe, you know, we prefer not to answer, no choice, no preference, or whatever the case may be. Marital status, hiring status, what is their, where are they at right now? Again, if you're going to leave the system, leave everybody in your system. Like I said, we don't delete anything, you inactivate. So maybe someone leaves, they transferred to school, they transferred to another store, whatever the case is, they're a borrowed partner. You can go in here and put in what they are. If after they've left, if they're rehirable, you know, I might put that in there. I might put a little note here saying rehirable or not rehirable. You can put those little reasons in there for it so that we can keep track on and again, the reports will show that information as well. EEOC stands for ethnic. So there are some places out there and some states out there where you can tie into your state's website, and it will update, and you can choose to transmit some of this information or record some of this information because maybe you get credit for it. You're going to get some type of a tax credit, or you get some type of a business credit for maintaining a certain level of diversity within your store. So that's where that comes into play. Driver's license number and expiration date. If you are a delivery situation and you have drivers, I highly recommend that you have them fill this information in so they have that information just in case. This assures you that the managers have in fact looked for the license. It's a valid license, and you can have that information in the system. Again, same thing with alien cards. If you are hiring people that have work visas, etc., you may want to put all that information in the system as well, just so you have that information. God forbid there's a fire, the paper documents got destroyed, at least in your system you have that information. And again, notes. You can put any kind of little notes about the person. So again, maybe Hannah, she's going away to college. So I may put in here seasonal rehire is available again starting, you know, mid-June or whatever the case may be. Okay, and it's a great tool so between management they can communicate with one another. So Hannah may call and say, hey, I can come back, you know, I'm done with my finals a little bit earlier, so I can swing back and I can start a week earlier. I mean, I can start at the beginning of June instead of the end of June. So they can go in and look at the notes and see what the story on that is. Okay? User definable. Now, this you may not see. There is a policy setting that you'd have to go turn on. But there's a couple of different areas that we have user definable fields. This particular one, the policy is called Show Employee Custom Fields. And here you can create your own little grid. So in this case, we've got something where we're tracking uniforms. So maybe you're a kind of place where you have to, you know, provide, you require specific uniforms, you have specific logo shirts, etc. It's not just the go buy yourself a pair of black pants and a white shirt. We have specific uniforms, shirts, dresses, etc. that you need to have. So I can go in here and I create it what this accounts for. So for instance, I have uniform style, color, and date of issue. So if I click on uniform style and hit edit, I have a choice. So these are the three styles that I have in my system right now. So formal, casual, or sporty. So I'm going to say that I've given them a casual uniform style, because maybe this is my coffee shop person versus my fine dining restaurant person. And the color that I gave them, they preferred gold. So I gave them a gold casual shirt, if you will. Date of issue, when did I give them to this? So it's going to default to today's date. So that's when I hired her, that's when I gave her the uniform. All right. Now to change any of this over here, customize. So in here, this is where you can create the field. And you'll notice down here are all the fields that have been created. Here are the three that are on the screen, and here are three that are off the screen. So you'll notice is active. And again, with anything we do, we will take it off. We will set it to inactive, but we never delete it. Because if you wanted to go back to it, you could. You could bring it back if you wanted to. So for uniform style, notice as I click on each of the active ones I have, how the information in the setup here changes. So with uniform styles, it's enumerated. And you'll notice here where I have possible values. Uniform color, the same thing, enumerated. Date of issue, though, the type is a date and time. All right? So when you're creating these, there are various different types, if you will, of fields that you can create. So for instance, enumerated. This is where you can set up values and you can put in choices. So once I set up something as an enumerated field, I then can go in this area and I can choose what are my drop-down choices. So I've got formal, casual, and sporty. Maybe I'm going to add a new one, and I'm going to leave it go just in line, and I'm just going to say summer. Maybe I have a new one that's a summer style. Okay? Edit will allow me to edit it. So again, I could change the code or I could change the value. I could change the name, if you will. Okay? Set to inactive. So winter months, maybe I don't want that showing up. I don't want that as a choice. So I can go ahead and set it as inactive. Or maybe the sporty style, we've eliminated it. We're no longer going to offer sporty. So, of course, if you do set that to inactive and you've got that assigned to any of your staff members, you will then go into their employee file and you will see that they no longer have a choice in their window. You will have to change up and pick one of the values that's actually current. Okay? The other options I have is Boolean. And that is going to give you the option to do a yes or no answer. Have you issued, maybe I could just say uniform issued, yes or no. Turned it in at termination, yes or no. So anytime I want a yes or no answer, that's where I can go with Boolean. Integral, this is going to give you the options to do just whole numbers. So how many did I give them? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? How many shirts did they walk out with? Real is going to allow decimal points. You'll literally get 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4. Maybe it's a sizing thing. Maybe your sizes don't run as whole numbers. Size 12, 13, 14. Maybe they run as 12.5, 3.2, whatever the case may be. Okay, and then date and time, which is pretty obvious. It's automatically going to give you the option to put in a date or time. Okay. So that is those. Again, just so you can see one, let's go ahead and actually add one. So we're going to say number issued. And I want this to be an integral. And I don't need anything else set for that. I'm going to say that. And OK. So now I have issued. So I can say I issued them 3. So they were given 3 shirts. Okay, so that is, again, user definable, and you would need to, in order to activate that tab, there's a policy that you have to go turn on. All right. Okay, this is a good time to take our 5-minute break. So we are at, let's just say we're at 15 after the hour, so I'll see everybody back at 20 after the hour. Hello, everybody. All right, let's pick up where we left off. So we've gotten through everything to do with employee setup. So again, there's a lot of flexibility in here, and there's just a lot that you'll have to go through and look at, and just to ensure that when you're setting it up the proper way. Also, again, go into your policy settings to see what other policy settings are affected through here. There's another policy setting, too, that I want to tell you about. It has to do with the security levels. So just to go back to job positions, there's a policy that's set up that you cannot see anyone that is in a higher security position than you have. So this goes back to what I was saying about owners and administrators being in the same security level. You can't see each other. As an owner, or let's go with a manager, my 5 managers can't see each other's records because I don't want them seeing what each other is getting paid. So if you are someone who is set up as equal to or greater than security level, you will not be able to see them. So again, with the owners and the administrators being set up at the same level, as a system administrator, I want to see everybody. I want to know what everybody is set up as and what their codes are. So if I have an owner calling me as a security person, let's say I'm working the help desk, saying that they can't do something, system's not working right for them, they can't do this, that, or the other thing, I want to be able to go in and view their setup. But if they are equal to security level as I am, I will not be able to see them in employee setup. So that's something, but again, there's a policy that you can go in and you can change about that. So just as an FYI in that piece. Okay, so we've gotten through performance, security levels, time clock manager. So this is where you can edit your time the day later. I strongly encourage you to, whatever's happening on the POS, the current day, you take care of all payroll issues on the front of the house. That's why we've got the employee time record and employee time settings as extensive as they are, where you can add shifts, you can modify shifts, you can add breaks, you can do all of that in that screen. Manage your current day labor from front of the house. Back here is about managing it after the fact, reviewing it the next day, or reviewing it based on payroll cycles. If you pay every 14 days, but it obviously is 2 weeks worth of time that you're doing, we're encouraging you to look at it on a day-to-day basis. So when you come in here, you'll notice that it's empty because basically when we pull over the information, we're pulling it by day. So if I want to look at what happened yesterday, I'm going to highlight in my calendar the date that I want to look at, and I'm going to hit get shifts, excuse me. This is going to show me all of my shifts for the day and everything that was done out on the front of the house. All right. If I go to today, yes, if I was clocked in, so you can see that I had someone clocked in, but I already clocked them out. If I had anyone else currently clocked in on the system right now, I could see that their out time, their punch time was empty. Again, I don't recommend that they necessarily fix it back here. I think that they should fix it on the front of the house. Whoever the manager on shift is should take care of it out there. Let it update back here, and then if you need to adjust it back here the day later, so be it. So that there's not any confusion. So just in case that maybe I'm back here, Abby's doing her cash out with me, I'm in the office, or let's say I had Brenda punched in, and Brenda's getting me her son. She's like, oh, I forgot to punch out. Oh, I'll take care of you, Brenda. I'll do it for you. Well, I might be back here punching Brenda out, and my other manager, Frank, is out on the floor going, oh, Brenda already left. She forgot to punch out. So maybe I'm fixing it out there. Now, we're going to have a collision. We're possible causing of data corruption, and we don't want to do that. All right. So at the top, I have File and I have Special. So what can I do here? Setup. This is where you go into the system and you set up what the parameters of your schedule is or what the parameters of your work is. And again, maybe you're not going to use scheduling. You don't have to use scheduling to use time clock management. Time clock manager, or having people just clock in and clock out, is just that. It's going to record all that information. There's no restrictions. There's no schedule to base it off of, actual versus scheduled. There's no locking in, if you will. You don't have to do schedule in order to use the system as a timekeeping system, which a lot of people don't always understand or know. Start time and end time under shift times. This isn't about your operational hours. I'm open from 11 to 10 every night. This is about shifts. When is the earliest that I have someone that's going to come in and clock in and start? When does my prep people come in? When do I actually, what time frame do I actually schedule people for? And I actually start calculating my labor based off of. So you want to put in that information, not necessarily 11 to 9. You want to put in how early are people actually coming in that actually could clock in. Day of the week. What is your start week? Some people run their schedule Sunday through Saturday. Others go Monday through Sunday. Some actually go Wednesday to Tuesday. There's all sorts of different rules out there in the world. So you're just selecting what is the first day of their week. And this would also be sales-wise and scheduling-wise. Okay, so I'm going to say Monday for me. Okay? Days to load. This is about the schedule. So when I'm building a schedule, how many days am I loading? How many days is it wanting to allow me in 1 week, if you will, to do things? So maybe I want to load 7. Maybe I want to load 14. Maybe I schedule 2 weeks out and I have it as one schedule as opposed to 2 schedule. Intervals. When I do my scheduling, what is the time frame that I want to schedule in? Do I schedule in hour increments? Do I schedule in 30-minute increments? You know, any variety of the choices through here. And show skill indicator. So this goes back to their employee settings. So based on if I am using the skill indicator, do I want it to show on the schedule? So again, when I'm building my schedule, I want to make sure maybe I have a balance of talent on my floor, so that I'm not just scheduling all seasoned people on a Monday and all week people on a Saturday. I want to make sure I have a proper balance. And that's useful if you've got new managers who are now just doing the schedule. They really don't know the staff very well. They're not really quite sure everybody's capability. So that's something that you might want to have turned on. All right. Over through here, payroll information, pay periods per year. So do they pay weekly, biweekly, semi-monthly, or monthly? Biweekly, commonly in industry, is called 26 frequency pay cycles, and semi-monthly is 24 frequency pay cycles. So, you know, biweekly, every other Friday you get paid. Semi-monthly, maybe the 15th and the 30th or 31st. So knowing that also when you're printing out pay cycle, printing out payroll reports, how we calculate overtime, we'll need to know that information so we calculate properly, and or monthly, okay? Last pay period end. So in order for the system to, what's the start point? You don't put in the first day of the first new pay cycle. You put in the last day of the last pay cycle. So for instance, let's just make this easy. I'm going to say I pay weekly. And again, I go Monday through Saturday, right? So I'm going to say my last pay cycle, oh goodness, let's say I started, I'm going to say I started in April. That's when I opened my restaurant. So my last pay cycle was April 7th. So that's telling the system that my first true payroll begins on April 8th. So that first Monday of the new cycle. Edit days prior pay period end. How far forward can I edit the pay? Number of grace periods I have. So my pay period ended. Again, I go Monday through Monday. In my world, I go Monday through Sunday. So if I leave it set to 2, I can edit through Tuesday of the new week, the back pay cycle. Now, that was put in as security, so managers, if they're needing to fix their labor costs, they can't go in on, say, Wednesday and go, oh, my labor cost is too high, and then go back to the previous pay cycle and start editing time frames again to maybe make the labor numbers match up properly. So how many days past the end of a cycle am I allowed to go in and edit the payroll? And some companies are very stringent on what their rules are. Some say, you know what, we end on Sunday, all edits have to be done by Monday, payroll is processed on Monday, period. You don't get to go to Tuesday or Wednesday or leave it sit for a week. Again, I'm doing it weekly for restaurants that do their payroll in 2-week increments. I don't want them going back 14 days to go fix day 1. I want them to be fixing it as they go along. And again, I don't want them on day 16 to be going in or 17 to be going in and fixing payroll that happened the very first week of that pay cycle. Again, this is about the period. It's not about biweekly, if you will. Okay? And okay that. Okay, special is where you can add shifts, delete shifts. If I have a break, I can delete a break if it was there for me, or view the change log. All right. So for instance, I'm going to go back to yesterday's. So I'm looking at the 26th. So here's Frank. So I could click here and click delete, or I could click add. and it's going to bring me up my little interface here. Now I'm going to add a shift for somebody. So one of my people called and said, oh my God, I totally forgot to clock in yesterday. Can you please take care of it for me? All right, so I'm going to clock in Gina. It's going to show me what Gina's possible job positions are. Again, this is all hingent on what I have set up in their employee file. I can't assign Gina to be a wait staff here because she doesn't have that in her records. So I'm going to say she's a cashier, what revenue center she worked out of, what is the type of shift. Is it a regular shift? Is it a meal break? Or is it a break? Okay. And again, in our shift rules, what are the differences, what you defined? Standardly, a meal break is going to be they're taking a 30-minute break. That's probably not paid. A break would probably be a 10-minute break that is paid. Again, all depends on your labor laws in your world, but I'll show you where you create these shift rules. So I'm going to pick a shift. By default, because it's a shift, it is paid, as opposed to if I took a meal break, that you have a choice of paying or not paying. Okay. Punch in date and end date. Self-explanatory on that. And what was the time and the out time. So she came in at 2 p.m. and I'm going to say she left at 11 p.m. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. Now if I click OK next, it's going to let me add another shift and just kind of keep following down the line. But I'm going to click OK. You are about to add a shift 9 hours, X minutes. Save changes? Yes. And so now there's a shift for Gina with all the information on there. Right? If I want to edit a shift, so two ways again of doing that. I can go back to special, or I could actually delete it. If I want to edit this shift, though, notice when I click on the various shifts, all this information up here changes. So I clicked on Emma. There's her information. It's just reflective boxes of what's through here in the grid. There's Frank. There's Frank. Notice this is a break, and it's a meal break, which is why it's in yellow, by the way. And then there's the shift I just added for Gina. So for Emma, let's say there's something about this shift I want to change. So, you know, do I want to change the dates? Maybe somebody manually added this to the system and they put it on the wrong date. They added the shift for the 26th and it was really supposed to be added for the 25th. That's something you might want to change. Maybe the time is different. You know, Gina punched in 11 to 5 and I'm like, you know what? I know that Gina was late. So I'm going to change this to 11:15. And save. Okay. Position, again, this all has to do with their job position. So if it was somebody you were clocking in that had multiple job positions and they accidentally picked the wrong one, but it didn't affect functionality-wise for them being able to work on the floor, it just had to do with pay rates, then maybe you change out what that job position was. Pay rate, so whatever reason, maybe for this particular shift, I'm giving Gina an extra 25 cents an hour just for this shift. Because she did me a favor, she came in, she wasn't on the schedule, and I just wanted to, you know, that's my way of giving her a bonus. Okay? Is paid, are we going to pay them? Yes or no? The business date. So again, remember, our system, the business date is the day the system was started. So in my POS right now, we've never done an end of day. So it goes back to when we first started the training class on July 30th or whatever day it was we started. So the dates reflected in punch out and punch in are system, if you will. They're the system date. What Windows shows is a real calendar date. But this is about business date. What actual business date is this recording on? So if I go to pull my reports, and let's say I'm still sitting on business date 8/20. If I go to pull the labor report for 26, this punch isn't going to be on there. But if I pull the report for 8/20, if that's what I changed the business day to, that's where I'm going to see that shift at. So that was a functionality that was added. I can't even tell you what version that was added on. Okay, so you could see the differences. And again, this is like support. So people are complaining that they can't find punches. The punches aren't showing up. I'm looking on the reports and it's not on the report. Well, again, the reports are going to pull themselves by the business date, not by the calendar date. Right? And type. If it's a break, what type of break is it? If I would have chosen break, what type of break is it? Is it a regular break, a meal break, or is it a canceled break? So again, in states where you're required to track, California, you're required to track the breaks that you give people, paid or unpaid. If for whatever reason I have a staff member that's on a 10-minute break and I have to call them back after 5 minutes, so I have to override the system to get them back in, that's going to show up as a canceled break. So that way if the Labor Department ever comes in, they can actually see all the records. Everything is recorded. All right? And once you make any changes here, you just click Save. All right. Filter by job position. So if I want to filter this by job position, so again, mind you, keep in mind maybe I've got 15 or 20 people that have worked for the day. I just want to go in and look at all my cooks. And I'm going to look at everybody who's in the system as a cook, or everybody who's in the system, let's say I want to do cashier. Everybody who's in the system as a cashier. My filter's not working right. I think it has more to do with the fact that I only have so few people on the system right now as opposed to the whole thing is showing. All right. I'll have to look into that. Apologize, guys. I must have a setting that's off someplace. But it should be filtering by job type. So again, if I'm the kitchen manager, and I tell my kitchen managers as the general manager, you're responsible for your kitchen labor. You need to review your kitchen labor on a daily basis. So I'm the kitchen manager, I come in, I want to just look at everybody who's a kitchen person, and then I can filter it by that particular job type. All right, so that is Time Clock Manager. And again, you can use this without using scheduling. It's actually really nice. Okay. All right, we'll get back to schedule in 1 second. Let's go to shift rules, and we'll see how fast I can get through this. We might hold off on scheduling until next class. So shift rules, we keep talking about these shift rules. Well, this is where you create the shift rules. So, and again, now as a default database, there are no shift rules in your system. Shift rules have to be added. They are city-specific, state-specific, county-specific, country-specific, etc. But I'm going to pick one that was added as a general meal break rule. So whenever you're building a rule, obviously you hit your plus sign again. What is the description of it? Alert employees on login. So if that is checked, any break that you have, it will pop up and give them a message that says you will get an alert that this is the following break. Okay. Notice how we have two different tabs, break versus meal break. So I'm going to look at a regular break. In most, and I can only speak for the states, for America, in most states you have two types of breaks. You have a paid break and you have an unpaid break. And typically, again, we always kind of, in the system, we've done two different tabs for it, for break versus meal break. So I'm going to say a regular break. First of all, is it enabled, yes or no? Okay, but once maybe I've created something, but I don't want to enforce it. So is it created, yes. Is it enabled, yes or no? Okay, there's my break. Is it paid, yes or no? In my break, in my world, I live in Illinois. In my world, for every 4 hours that an employee works, they get a 10-minute paid break. If they are going to work 6 hours, they get a 30-minute unpaid break. So my rules are based accordingly. So is it enabled? Yes. Is it paid? Yes. Is a manager override required when employee exceeds break time? Yes. If I'm sending somebody off my floor for 10 minutes and they're going to clock out and take their break, they're going to come back, and if they clock in at 13 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes after their break should have ended, I want the system to say, you need a manager now to clock you in because you're late. Because maybe I'm crazy busy as a manager. I was too crazy busy to go yell at that employee to tell them to get their butt back on the floor. So when they finally did show up, I want to know that they're there. I want to override and show the fact that they were late, and maybe I want to, yell at them at the same time. Break every. So this is where you would set up what is your rule. So like I said, in Illinois, every 4 hours they are required by law to give them a 40-minute break. So this should be set up for 240 minutes. That's 4 hours. All right. So break every 4 hours, 240 minutes. Alert before. So what that's telling me is that that employee, when they're on the register, 5 minutes before they hit the 4-hour mark, so at 3 hours and 55 minutes, it's going to pop up and say, you have to take a break in 5 minutes. So now again, in our world, and I don't know about the UK or Australia or anywhere else, but when I say you have to take a 10-minute break within 4 hours, it's not at 4 hours, it's within 4 hours. For every 4 hours you work, I have got to give you a 10-minute break. I can give you that 10-minute break an hour after you signed on. I can give it to you at 2 hours you signed on. I can give it to you at 3 hours and 55 minutes if I want. This is basically saying, here's my limit though. When I'm approaching 4 hours, 5 minutes before I hit 4 hours, I'm going to remind you, you haven't taken your break yet. All right? Minimum required duration. So again, this to me, and this is kind of set up goofy. I really should have gone into meal break. Everything that's set up here really should be a part of meal there. Minimum duration for my 10-minute break is going to be 10 minutes. Okay. Maximum duration is going to be 10 minutes. Okay, maybe I'll give them a buffer of 2 minutes. Okay, so before it says that you have to get me. So that would be my 10-minute break. Okay, and again, keep in mind I'm putting this on the wrong one. When I set this up, I should have just gone to meal, and I set it up, unfortunately, as a regular break. But again, it really doesn't matter, guys, because you can set it up, you know, no matter what you write here or which one of these tabs you pick, this is where you set up the parameters for it so that you know it's calculating correctly. Okay? Because maybe I just have this set as break. I don't do 2 separate breaks. I just do 1. All right? Can employee waive a break? Not allowed. So basically, is my employee allowed to override them taking a break? Yes or no? Yes, they can with a manager override, or yes, they can without a manager override. So if they choose not to take a break, so when my little warning comes up 5 minutes before they hit 4 hours, and it comes, you must take your break, yes or no, am I going to allow them to say, no, I don't want it? Am I going to allow them to override it? Or am I going to say, no, they can't override it? And if they want to override it, then they have to do it with the manager. Because maybe it's the manager that says, I know I have to give you a break, but we're just too slammed right now, I can't do it. So what's happening is that every time they go and code in their login, it keeps coming up and saying, you need a break, you need a break, you're over your time, you're over your time. So that's why the manager might get in there and say, I'll move on writing it and we'll give you a break later. Early break-in. Will I allow them to come back early? So if I send them on a break, they're out for 5 minutes and I just get slammed. And I say, hey, I need you to come back. I have to have you come back. Is it allowed? Yes or no? Yes with manager override, break remains. So what that says is that the manager can override it, and whatever they've clocked out for their break, that time remains. So if they've been able to take, 5 minutes of their break, it will still show 5 minutes. Yes, manager overrides, break is canceled. In some states, you've got to give them the full 10. So again, California, actually California is 15 minutes if I'm not mistaken. If they take anything less than the full 15 minutes, that break is canceled and they get another 15 minutes. Basically, you're restarting the clock. Okay? Yes, without manager override, break remains. So again, I'm allowing them to come back early. I'm letting the staff member choose to come back early. But whatever proportion of their break they took stays. So if they took 5 minutes, it stays at 5 minutes. Okay? So again, the same rules if I do meal break. So again, this would be really why we would use this tab for a meal break instead. All of the options are exactly the same way. What this is allowing you to do, instead of having 2 separate break rules, you could just have 1 break rule, but you have 2 tabs to it. And so it knows, so basically they just go and they say, I'm taking a break. And they would tell the system then, am I taking a regular break or am I taking my meal break? Instead of creating a regular break rule and then a meal break rule is basically what we did in the system. My advanced tab, upon clock in, show the following message. So every time they clock in, they're going to see this message that says state law requires blah, 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 blah. Every time they clock in. And again, depending on what state or county you're in, that might be something you have to do. Or maybe it's not something you have to do, but this isn't a, yes, I've seen it once, and I can click, yes, I acknowledge it, and it never pops back up again. It will pop up every single time they clock in, right? So keep that in mind. Additional options. There's another warning we can put in the system. So we can warn for overtime. Overtime warning, hours per day. So I can put in an overtime warning when they hit, basically that says, when you hit 8 hours, you're an OT. Again, state specific. Illinois, I can have somebody work 15 hours a day, and there's no overtime involved in that. We calculate overtime when you hit 40 hours in the week. So if you work a 4-day week, you can work 10 hours a day as long as you don't hit 40. In California, you get overtime if you exceed 8 hours in a day plus 40 hours in a week. So they can't do a 40-hour work or a 4-day work week and do 40 hours, because as soon as they hit 8.1 hours, they're in overtime. So something to keep in mind. So that is how you set up shift rules. So again, these are where you set up the rules, and then you have various ways that you can apply them. You can apply them as a general shift rule and general setup that everybody gets, I've lost it. Oh, I'm sorry, in admin setup. You can apply it in job positions. So you apply a specific rule to job positions. So in businesses where they have a union, the shift rule requirements for, say, cooks might be very different than the shift rule requirements for wait staff on the floor. So there's another option so you can understand why you might want to do it based on job type. Or you can assign it per person. So in the actual employee setup, you can assign the shift rule that goes to this particular person. And again, maybe I set up a minor rule. I set up a shift rule for a minor that I would just attach strictly just to that particular employee. Okay, so that's shift rules. We're going to hold on scheduling. We don't have enough time to go through scheduling. There's a lot in there. But we're going to get through the rest of this. Collaboration. Okay, I'm just going to put this on tape. This is kind of silly. Remember, collaboration is the website that shows up here. So for whatever reason, I want to turn that off because it's irritating me today. Just click on that, and that makes it go away. If I want to bring it back again, I can click collaboration again. So it's a toggle. It's an on and off for whether or not whatever website you have displayed here shows up. Okay, cash management we're going to hold off on too because that's huge. Contests. So this is where you can set up your contests in the system. So again, we have our little way of scrolling. So I've got two, most desserts and most steak sandwiches. Name it. Contest period. Is it recurring daily? So is this a daily contest, weekly, or monthly? Or am I going to do it for a specific range of dates? Okay. Then what items am I tracking? So select. Then will take me to my menu list, which I know we haven't been to yet. And we're going to track the after 8. So I'm adding after 8. No points assigned to this item. Would you like to set points? So this is also telling me that I am picking something that doesn't have any points assigned to it. When you do contests, you're doing it based on points. So I'm going to say, yeah, let me assign some points to this. So this is going to have a point value of 5. Okay? So now this is going to be everything. Anytime a server rings up any of these items, it's going to track how many they rung, and if I choose to do this based on points, because maybe my servers give extra points if they sell lobster versus if they sell a hamburger on the same contest. Or maybe I'm looking to do a contest for upsells. So that's something that you might want to set up. You can change points. I can remove a specific item off of my list, or I can remove all of them and start all over again if I want to. Okay. Description, you can put in what this is. So I could, right now I got this contest is to see who sells the most steak sandwich. I could put this is our flavor of the day. This is our monthly special, our weekly special. Let's see who can sell the most lobsters for me. King crab is the special of the week, etc. All right, when you're setting up what you're tracking, not only do you set it up, you can set it up by product. You go by categories. Maybe I don't want to do individual items. Maybe I'm going to go in here and say all grill items. I just want to track all grill items. Now, assign points, yes or no? No, I don't feel like assigning points. Because maybe the other part of this with contests is, yeah, maybe you're doing an incentive contest for the staff, but maybe you also want to track certain things. I want to track who sells grill items. Or more specifically, what I would actually do, I want to track beverages, especially my non-alcoholic beverages, especially non-alcoholic beverages that my staff gets themselves. I want to track how many beverages are on my ticket based on my customer count to see how often they're not selling a beverage, or to possibly make sure that they're not bouncing a beverage, split checks, the whole bit. Okay, and again, I can choose to set points to it, or I don't have to. The other thing I can do is I can also track by job positions. Maybe I'm doing a contest strictly with my to-go staff because they're just having a real challenge, and I have specific job positions for my to-go staff. Or maybe my cashiers, because my cashiers probably ring my to-go sales. So I'm going to track that job position and see what their sales are compared to, say, what my regular staff, my wait staff sales are, something to that effect. All right? Advanced tab. So this is where you can say the contest runs all day, or maybe not. Maybe it only runs through certain time frames. Maybe it's a happy hour promotion, so it only goes from 4 to 6. And during that promotion, we're tracking how many buffalo wings or potato skins you can sell. So again, your choice between either running it all day or running it for a specific time frame. Show top X number of employees. So maybe I want to see the top 5 or the top 3 when I'm looking at the reports I'm looking online. Okay. Hide other product quantities sold. So I'm only wanting to look at the items that I'm tracking in the contest. Okay? Show employees with points only. So again, I'm mimicking, if I have it unchecked, I want to show everybody, or I only want to show those employees that have points. So again, then that is only going to work for any contest that I've actually assigned points to. So because I didn't assign any points in cashiers or with categories, they're not going to show, but it will show by product. Disable editing once contest starts. So they can't go back. I can't go back, and once I start this contest, I can't go back in here and rearrange it. I can't add things or take things away to it. Once it's in, it's basically locked down. If they want to do a different contest, then they can create a new contest. Okay? And that takes us through all of that with the exception of scheduling and cash management, which we'll catch up on Thursday. So now I'm going to open this up to questions because I can't run too late today. I do have another appointment not too far out. So let's go ahead, Emily, and open up for questions. Emily, can you hear me? Emily, if you're talking, you're on mute. Well, I'm not sure if we've lost her, everybody. I just pinged her a message. We'll see if oh, here she comes. Yes, not on mute, not sure what's going on. Okay, so we seem to be having some technical difficulties. So Emily, you can hear, oh, I'm not, can you hear me? Okay, so she can hear me. So I don't know if you want to copy and paste some of the questions that are coming through into the chat window, or if we want to hold off and just keep these until Thursday, and we'll just do a little extra Q&A then. Your choice. Let's see. You can open questions. It is above this window. I can. I see chat. Send questions to staff, organizer. I'm not seeing that option. You can open questions. It is. All right, so I'm not seeing what she says, so she copied and pasted. So job position setup, advanced tab, initial float, is that used for server banking if the house gives them change for their bank? Yes, you could use it for that. I never thought of that. Most restaurants don't do that, but yeah. The float piece, so the question is, it has to do with employee setup and job, not job position, it's actually job position. And setting up the float. So normally I associate this with anytime there's a cash drawer because, again, the house is providing the cash drawer with the money inside of it. But, yeah, if you have a server banking environment and the house is providing all of the servers with their bank, basically their float, then, yes, you could definitely assign this to cashiers, to wait staff, and say that, yes, prompt, or maybe that would be a situation where they always would, again, start, maybe they always give every staff member $50 and change. I can see this in cocktail, for cocktail waitresses in various bars, they might do that. Again, a lot of restaurants, when you're talking server banking, they require the staff to bring their own change in that environment. And then when you're talking a bar situation with a physical cash drawer, then the house provides that change. But yes, definitely, if the house is going to provide the bank, then you could, again, use the float for it, even in a waitstaff environment. Set up birthday, driver's license, alien card. Are these fields encrypted? No, they're not. So yeah, so anybody who can log into the system when it comes to employee setup, and we're in the actual employee setup area. So the question is about the birth date and then all of the HR information, and none of this is encrypted. Okay, if there's any others. Oh, just 2 requests.
Can you hear me?
So that's, oh, now I can hear you.
Okay.
Hello.
Sorry about that. I hung up and dialed back in.
You know, technology, there are days. There are days. Okay, so we just have the 2 questions then?
We have more.
Oh, okay.
If an EE punches out of a required break and a table wants their check, is a manager override required to allow another server to finish the check?
Yes. Well, back up. It depends on how you set up the tables. So if you remember when we go back to table setup, and I'm going to have a brain fart on this right now. Section setup. I'm having a brain fart. Here we are. When you set up the table sections, do you have it enforced as an employee lockout? Yes or no? If this is set up for that table section, then a manager will have to override it. But again, you can have anybody then touch the table. It's going to come up and say, manager approval needed. Manager swipes their card, and then whoever's taking over that table, then that will become, again, their table. They would take on the responsibility for that table. But that has to do with whether or not you have this checked off here in table section setup.
Next question, can we have order numbers other than, and it has a caret and then a 0 in PixelPoint version 12?
Say that one more time.
Can we have order numbers other than, and it's a caret and then a 0 in PixelPoint version 12?
I think they're looking for alphanumeric. I think that that's, I don't know what the caret. Table numbers, I know, are still strictly just numbers. You can't do alphanumeric in table numbers. In order numbers, I'm going to say, I want to say there is an option. Alpha. Allow alphanumeric ticket numbers. So if we're talking, if they're using the ticket number as the order number, then yes. If they're talking order numbers in product setup, this is why we haven't gotten in here yet, guys, but there's a whole bunch of choices through here where you can do ticket number, covers, or there's an order number functionality through here as well. Then I don't believe here, no. But if they're talking using the ticket number as the order number, then yes, by setting up the policy. Okay, next.
Can you use Dallas key for employee login?
Can you use what key for employee login?
Dallas key?
Dallas? As in the state? I mean the city? State.
Yes.
Dallas key for employee login. I don't know what that is. Forgive my ignorance, but I don't know what the Dallas key is.
Those are all the questions I have today.
All right, so if anybody wants to give a little bit more information real quick on what this Dallas key is, I'm not familiar with that, what that is.
Dallas key is an I button on the POS.
Oh, that little thing with the safe, little magnetic reader. No, that functionality does not work. It was an interface I know that we were looking for with another third-party vendor. Last I heard that did not go forward. Now, that's not to say, as all of you know out there, franchise dealers, you all work with vendors outside of what we at corporate know about. So I know that some of you have worked with other companies to design interfaces. So if somebody has made that functionality work as an interface, then yeah, but has it been certified? If it's not in our certified device list, then we don't know about it or we haven't certified it. There may be somebody in the company that knows that we have it, but that's to say that it's not general release, we don't have documentation for it, and it's not certified. I know with our EverServe, oh God, which was it? It wasn't the 6000, it was the version before. We did have the little reader attached to the register, but then they took that off. So as far as I know, the answer is no on that piece. And I don't know of anything that we're actually still researching that. Not to say that we're not, I just don't know for a fact that we are. Okay?
I did get one more question, if you have time.
Yeah, I got another about 10 minutes before I have to
Okay.
run.
And the question is, ticket number, order taker has to type manually. We need an option like the order number should come automatically and should start from 1, and it should restart daily automatically. Is this any option?
Okay, the order number functionality you're talking about, that was designed for the table tents. So the reason that it doesn't do auto is to let people, they pick up a table tent that has a number on it, and then that way they manually can input that table tent number into the system. I want to say, but we have the option, again, in your receipts, and check some of your policy settings for the order number. So you can choose this order number here. You can choose to allow the system to pick the last 4 digits to make the order number the last 4 digits of the transaction number. So then you don't have to do that. So then it is doing it automatically. And actually it's the last 3 digits. So it'll go from 1 to 999. And then it resets itself. So if you put this in your receipt setup, it will then show on the receipt order number, and it'll be the last 3 numbers of the actual transaction number. So that might be what you're looking to do. That would pre-assign it for you. There's no key entry in that at all, and there isn't a need then to have another pop-up window to pop. The order functionality that you're using is designed for those table tents where they can key in what the specific table tent they're handing off is. Okay.
One more, it's more of a comment. It says, iButtons are on most hardware, behave like card swipe, and should work fine.
Okay. See, and I haven't had any interaction with them, so I can't say yay or nay. I know if I go to devices, I haven't seen any out there, but that's not to say, like I said, you guys work with people on your own, working on interfaces, etc. So there may be some out there that are working.
And another comment came in. It said, order number option in general receipt setup will print the last 3 digits of transaction number. It will not start from 1 daily.
No, it won't do it daily. It's just going to go 1 through 999. So unless you, I have to check and see if we have a policy. I know at one point there was, I might be getting confused with another POS system that I work with, an option to reset transaction numbers on a daily basis. I put on an action item list to see if I can find that. I'm not sure that we actually have that policy. That's payment resets. I'll put that as an action item. I don't know for a fact that that Pixel has it. I might be getting confused with another one. So reset transactions. I will research that and see if we have that.
Another comment said, not resetting is best as your competitors can't see how many orders you have done.
Well, that would, but that's if they know. I mean, that would be if they realize that it's a running total as opposed to a daily reset or a monthly reset, et cetera. I mean, that would require your competitors to have some intimate knowledge of how the system functions. Because at some point, the transaction numbers, I believe, reset themselves. They only can go so far, I believe. But I'll research that.
And that is all I have.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you, everybody, for your attention. I appreciate it. And we will continue this on Thursday. We will finish off schedule. And I think I'm going to hold off on cash management. We're going to finish off on scheduling because I know we haven't finished that yet. And I believe on Thursday, we're going to go into Form Designer. I'm going to take you into, I think we're far enough into this that we can get into Form Designer before we go into product setup. I think that's not such a bad path to take. So we'll definitely be covering those 2 options and possibly member. We'll get into members. It depends on, scheduling is pretty intense and Form Designer can be kind of intense. So that is the game plan for Thursday. All right, so thank you, everybody. And we'll see you on Thursday. Emily, thank you as always, and enjoy your vacation.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.